is waiting for some kind of hookup from anybody, anywhere. And you don't have to be a man. You got some women in here waiting for a hookup too. So they would lay there on this porch waiting for a hookup. Just one good job is all I need. Just give me one. One good job. If I could just get my foot in the door. I don't have to have the CEO's position. Just let me sweep his floor, and I'll be glad if I could just get in. If you could just let me take one class. If you could just put my application at the top of the pile and bring me in. All I need is one. Just give me one interview. I promise you, if you give me one interview, I can sell myself. I can get the job. I can do a great job. If the right time, if my season would just come to where I wouldn't have to wait in line behind everybody else. Well, verse 5 says that a certain man was there on the porch. This man had an infirmity, and the text says, for 38 years. Now, that's a long time, even to me. When you're 40, 38 years, that's a long time. Now, I understand. Some of you will say, well, wait till you get 200. I understand, but I'm 40 today, so it's a long time for me. And I was thinking back, 38 years ago, I was 2. So I had to do some research. 38 years ago, Boeing 747 jets began to fly. Well, they were flying before that, but not as commercial flights. Now they began to fly as commercial flights. Neil Armstrong walked the moon 38 years ago. That's a long time. Sesame Street debuted. I do remember that. 38 years ago. And 38 years ago, all of us wish we had Marcus Welby as our doctor, because he had that bedside manner and cured everybody, and so he was on TV. Now, believe it or not, I remember Marcus Welby. I think I was watching the reruns by the time I knew who he was, but Mannix and y'all, come on, y'all remember back in the day. I like Mannix. I think he's the guy that could drive into his house, And so Richard Nixon was president of the United States back then. Spiro Agnew was the vice president. Here's something. A new car costs you $3,278 for a brand new. That's a long time ago. You could go to Harvard and get an education for $2,000 a year 38 years ago. You could go to the movies and pay $1.50 per ticket 38 years ago. That's a long time now, ain't it? You could get a gallon of gas, watch this now, for 35 cents. That was 38 years ago. You could get a stamp and mail your letter for 6 cents a stamp. You could buy a pound of bacon, 76 cents a pound. Eggs cost you 40 cents a dozen. And bread was 23 cents for the whole loaf. I'm talking about 38 years ago. That was a long time. This man had been sick for 38 years. Anybody been going through something for a long time? Just don't seem like stuff is ever going to change. It's never going to get any better. It's never going to be any different. Man is sitting there, verse 5 says, and yet thank God for verse 6. Everybody in here needs a verse 6 in their lives. Verse 6 is a verse that we need to pop into our lives when it looks like nothing's ever going to change, when it looks like I'm going to stay in this state that I am. Brother, when it looks like your life is forever relegated to nothingness, everybody needs a verse 6 in their lives. And verse 6 says, when Jesus saw him lying there, thank God for Jesus. When he saw them lying there, the text says that he came and look at this. He knew that he already had been in that condition a long time. Now let's park there for a second. Here we go. No matter what your situation is looking like today, and no matter how long it has been looking that way, you need to know that Jesus saw the man lying there. Did he see everybody else? Of course he did. But today is his turn. Because the text says he sees this man lying there, and he knew how long the brother had been in that condition. So that tells me a couple of things. It tells me, number one, that no matter what I'm going through, I am not off of God's radar screen. That means that no matter how things look to me from my human point of view, I am always on the divine radar screen. There is never a time when my little beacon stops bleeping, because you know what? He always sees exactly where I am. I'm always there. He also knows my condition. You ever feel like nobody really knows what's going on with you? You ever feel like nobody really will understand? You ever have a hard time, brothers, trying to express how you feel? I don't know about you, but I have a hard time with that sometimes. Sometimes I just don't really know how to put into words exactly what I'm feeling. And those of you that got girlfriends and wives and mothers and all that, they'll say, well, why don't you talk about it? Talk about it. Tell me how you feel. Problem is we don't often know how to express exactly what our feelings are like, because we are not naturally emotional beings. We are more logical, so we get quiet. Why? Not because we don't really want to talk, but because we can't figure out exactly what we need to say. And so sometimes we feel like nobody will understand what we're going through. I got any brothers in the house? He knows your condition. He knows what you can't talk about to anybody else. He understands the feeling that you, A, can't put into words, and B, if you could put it into words, you still wouldn't share it. Because he understands. You're not off his radar screen. He knows your condition, and he knows how long you've been in your condition. Well, why didn't he do something before? Because he's God, and he gets to make that decision. And I need to clear something up. He can meet you where you are. He can come to you. See, we done messed up the message in the church. The message has become, you need to come to Jesus. What's wrong with you? Come on to Jesus. That's not what this says. The man couldn't do nothing. He'd been laying there for 38 years. He ain't coming to nobody. He's sitting there waiting for somebody to come to him. And yet, Jesus comes to him. And you know what? All through the Bible, God has been coming to us. From the moment we fell in the Garden of Eden, through our first federal parents, Adam and Eve, God started coming to us. He came and walked in the garden in the cool of the day, because God has a habit to coming to us. When we fell into sin and there was no way to get us out, God reached inside himself, pulled out himself, wrapped himself up in flesh, sent himself down through 42 generations. Jesus was born, and you know what they called him? Emmanuel, God with us, because God came to us. Jesus says, I came to seek and to save them that are lost. He says, I came that you might have life, and life more abundantly. And when this life is finally over, guess what? We're not just going to float up to him. He's got to come back for us first and escort us out of here. He has a habit of coming and looking for us. And yet we keep telling everybody, come to Jesus. No, somebody in here today needs to know that Jesus will come to you. He will meet you right where you are, no matter how low you think you are. He sits high, but yet he looks low. And by fact, the Bible says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. That means he had to come to your door. He'll come to you. He'll meet you right where you are. So Jesus asked the man a really crucial question. Question I probably need to ask Brothers in here today,